Is the framed okay?
Yeah, that looks great. You got all the work.
Hi everyone, welcome to the first check of the exploration vessel Nautilus. My name is Megan Cook and I'm a Science Communication Fellow for the EVNautilus along with the Young Explorer from Mission Blue.
And I'm Dr. Erik Cordes. I'm a professor from Temple University, and I'm out here as one of the primary investigators on this cruise to the undersea seamounts of the Anegada Passage. Exploring the deep sea, a new area of the deep sea that no one had ever been to before. We did a series of dives on a bunch of different seamounts. We were mostly looking at the deepwater coral communities and trying to figure out how the seamounts got there, what their geological origin was, and see how these communities are similar to others that we've looked at in the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico.
I'm here representing Mission Blue. Thanks Mission Blue for tuning in and hosting this Google Hangout with us. Mission Blue is all about helping people understand the interconnections between humans and oceans. No ocean, no us on the planet. If you've been watching on Netflix, they just launched the Mission Blue movie, which went live in last month and has already been making big splashes, helping people understand just a little more about why the ocean's important to us every single day. I'm out here in my second year sharing why deep seas are important to us, and we have a guest star with us, someone lurking in the background here. This is the ROV Hercules, a remotely operated vehicle capable of diving 4,000 meters beneath the deep sea and bringing all of that footage live to you over the internet to nautiluslive.org.
Yeah, so this is our primary tool for exploration, Hercules, along with Argus, which is over there, which we'll show you in just a second. But on the front of Hercules are all the different tools that we use to go down and collect samples, take a lot of pictures, a lot of amazing video that a lot of you probably saw over the last couple weeks on Nautilus Live. This is the main camera, the HD camera that's filming all of our exploration. A couple of manipulator arms here to collect samples, and our tool box, the sled here, the basket, which we can store all of the rock samples and the other organisms that we're collecting, the mud and the sediments, and then some more water sampling gear and other boxes on the side where we can save all the samples, bring them back, see what it is that we've actually found. When you're out doing pure exploration, a lot of the times you can come across things and you just have no idea what you're looking at. Really the most interesting part of exploration are the things that you don't expect. You go down looking at a seamount, thinking you're going to find one thing, and you find something totally different. And that's when your mind gets blown, and you have to go back and recoup and rethink all of your theories about what brought you there in the first place. That's the joy of exploration.
So we are here off the British Virgin Islands to the east of them, or actually they're just in the background.
Yeah.
Today we had to collect our samples and bring them into customs to make sure they were cleared. Although we don't know much about the deep sea, we do know some things are endangered and protected by CITES, which is the international regulations for what kind of endangered species you can sample for science, and also to regulate their illegal trade around the world. So we had to check in with the customs officers here at the British Virgin Islands because we had been doing research in their waters.
Yep, and we collected some of the stony corals. All of that group is protected worldwide. You can't exchange them. Well, you need a permit to collect them, and then you can't import or export them out of a country. So we found some deep sea corals. Just like in the shallow water coral reefs, the same kinds of species live in the deep sea and form these large reef structures down there, host a really diverse community, create an entirely different ecosystem that's totally cut off from light. But a lot of the similar species, so the shallow water species are protected, and so are the deep water species. So we had our permits, and we just went in and verified that, showed them what we collected, made sure that we had the permits, and we got the okay to leave the country.
Always good.
Yeah.
Make sure to take our science home.
Well, you know, we might want to hang out here a little bit longer, but
It's pretty nice. It's very warm. We heard it's snowing on the U.S. mainland, so if you're joining us from there, we're sending you a little bit of heat now. Yeah, sorry. We have been exploring seamounts of the Anegada Passage. So let's take a little step back and talk about what a seamount is. It is a mountain underwater. Might seem unbelievable to you, but 95% of the ocean floor is still unexplored. So we have entire ranges of mountains that we haven't seen before. That was the case here off the east coast of the British Virgin Islands, in the Anegada Passage. It is one of the few deep water channels where water can move from the Atlantic into the Caribbean. There are 7 seamounts, 7 mountains underwater, only a couple of which had ever been seen by humans before. So the last, let's see, 10 days or so, we've been diving on those seamounts, checking them out. In order to qualify as a seamount, you need to rise 1,000 meters off the sea floor. And Eric, do you want to tell us a little bit about why seamounts are special? Why would we want to explore these areas?
There are a lot of theories about how the organisms get to these seamounts, how they find them in the middle of the ocean. They're basically like islands in the deep sea. A lot of the organisms will stay, just like there are a lot of organisms that just stay in shallow water. A lot of species prefer just a specific depth. And so in the vast expanse of the ocean, there are only a few places, these sort of islands, underwater islands, where their habitat exists. And so we don't know how, just how you would study how a bird would get from one island to the next if they're separated by a long distance. We're trying to figure out how these organisms, these species, mostly the deep water corals, again, get from one seamount to the next, how isolated an individual seamount is, how different they are, and we saw that there were actually a lot of differences between the seamounts. They might be right next to each other, only maybe 10 or 20 miles, but we saw very different communities, species on one seamount that didn't show up on any of the other ones. So they may just be sitting there and evolving all by themselves on one seamount and not really connected to another one. And some of the species were everywhere we looked. And so we're still, that's all just soaking in. It's going to take us a little while to figure out what all those stories mean. But we learned a lot. We learned an incredible amount.
Now, Eric, you study deep water corals, which is sort of a obscure piece of science, something that we know so little about. Can you tell us why these deep water corals are special?
Sure. There's actually more species of deep water corals than there are shallow water corals with symbionts. I mean, everybody thinks of like the Great Barrier Reef or some of the islands in the Caribbean with the fringing reefs around them. But in fact, there are much larger areas of the deep sea that contain coral reefs and a lot more species down there. We're really just starting to learn how interconnected the deep sea is with the rest of the ocean and the rest of the ecosystem. A lot of the organisms that hang out at the surface that provide food for fisheries, that are part of this larger ecosystem, they visit the deep sea pretty often, and we saw a lot of them on our dives. And they'll come down, they may feed down there, they may breed down there, we saw cat sharks that were coming down and laying their eggs on some of the corals. And then a lot of these species will return to the surface. They'll bring things back up to the surface with them. They'll transport food back and forth. And so we're really just starting to learn just how connected the deep sea is and what a vital role it plays in all of our oceans.
Now, if you've been following along with the season on nautiluslive.org, you can go there to check out live video footage as well as highlight videos and photo albums. There are some incredible photos of some of these organisms that we found on the deep sea. One of my favorite is the big pink black coral. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
How a black coral is pink.
How a black coral is pink and why that's important?
Yeah, well, the black corals are named just for their skeleton, and a lot of them historically have been used for jewelry, for making jewelry. So that was one of the species we were talking about our permits. That was one that we weren't permitted to collect at all. So we took some great pictures, but left them alone. And that's probably good. The one that Megan's talking about, you can definitely see the highlights online. It was bigger than we are. It was easily as tall as Herc and filled the whole front of the sub. And those corals, the black skeleton is laid down very, very slowly. Everything in the deep sea moves slowly. So anything that reaches a certain size in shallow water, that's going to take a lot longer in the deep sea. And so some of that coral, their relatives in the Pacific have been aged at over 4,000 years. So this gigantic coral tree that we were parked up next to was probably at least thousands of years old. They've been there for thousands of years. And there were tons of little organisms when we zoomed in, lots of different species living on it, providing shelter and habitat for a lot of different species. And again, the connections to the broader ecosystem and the importance of these deep water corals, which, we've known about deep water corals for a really long time, since like the 1700s, and a lot of the worldwide expeditions that went around the 1800s, but it's really only since we had vehicles like this, like Herc and Argus, we could go down and take pictures and really see what's down there and understand more about the system. Megan said that 95% of the oceans are still unexplored. Well, if you're just counting the parts that we've taken pictures of that we've actually seen with our own eyes, it's more like 99.99. We've seen so little of the deep sea. I mean, historically they use trawls and dredges, and we've done a lot of mapping using really advanced sonar like we've done on this ship in this, but it's 30 years that we've had a vehicle like this, been able to take the pictures, how beautiful it is. Okay. In the middle of Google. Whoops.
Oh, it really just crashed by a
I
box.
hope we're still there. Good job, Allison.
Good job, Allison.
You deserve a swim.
Yeah.
Well, this is the new era of being camera working. Yeah.
Hi there. Are you back with us? This is the fun of exploring from the middle of the ocean.
Cool off break.
Quick cool-off break for our team here. It's very warm here in the British Virgin Islands, so we're going to step back here on deck and continue. All right, we're here. Let's go on up.
All right. Should we do? I don't know. Should we see if there are any questions that come in? Or no? Ah,
Yeah.
all right.
All right, we're sorry for losing you guys there. A little bit of overheating out here in the British Virgin Islands, the people and the computer, I think. Let's talk a little bit about how young explorers could get out onto a ship like Nautilus or become an ocean explorer themselves in their career. Do you want to talk about what
Sure.
brought you here?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be a marine biologist since I was in second grade, and I got involved with some research pretty early on. But the Nautilus program didn't really exist in the Ocean Exploration Trust. Now you have great opportunities to come on board to apply to be an intern and come out and help collect data and run the video or even drive the vehicles.
Did you have a favorite science class or favorite science teacher growing up?
My fifth grade teacher inspired me quite a bit to become a marine biologist. It was going out and fishing with my grandfather and some of our vacations in summer, playing on the shore that really inspired me to become a marine biologist. And then, I had some great mentors in college and in graduate school that really encouraged me to keep going.
There's always those. Well, I don't want to one-up you, but I decided I wanted to be a marine biologist in the first grade. Sorry. I actually grew up in the desert, though. I grew up in Boise, Idaho. If anyone's joining us from Boise, hi to all those mountains and sagebrushes out there. And snow. And snow. And it was a teacher who inspired me as well. My first grade teacher, Terry Dole, actually brought ocean curriculum into our classroom via Bob Ballard. So
Wow.
It's a big circle to complete it out here. But the ocean wasn't in my backyard, so I just continued to read. I was always really interested in science because it was a way to be really curious about the world. Everybody can be a scientist just by observing the world around them, continuing to ask questions. Why are things how they are? Why does one thing look different than another? You can run all your own science and investigation. So I read a lot of books and eventually ended up going to college at Oregon State to study biology and chemistry. Got involved as a diver and just as an explorer, staying curious about lots of things in the world. My newfound passion is in telling ocean stories, so I also want to encourage all our ocean explorers out there, if you don't know that you want to be a scientist, there's many other ways to be part of an expedition like this. We need ROV engineers, people who fly the vehicles, fix the vehicles, electrical engineers to keep our lights on at night, video broadcast people and filmmaking crew in order to help convey these stories out to the world. We need writers, we need teachers, scientists of every kind. Even if you like cooking, we need a chef because an expedition can't carry on without good food to keep us going.
It's the most important thing on the ship, I think.
What's your favorite thing about living at sea, Erik?
I just love, the feeling of being out in the middle of nowhere, the idea that you are going somewhere that no one's ever been before. That's really the most thrilling thing for me. Most of the time we're sitting inside and working and sitting in front of a computer or a bunch of monitors watching Herc and Argus. But when you get to take those breaks and go outside and, really feel like you're out in the middle of the ocean and detached a little bit, those are the great moments.
Now we're having a little technical trouble, I think, floating out here in the ocean getting your questions. But if you do have questions, you can send them in Oh, turn this on. Hi everyone, back with us. A little bit of overheating, a little bit of technical trouble. But this is the inside of the RV hangar. Welcome. We're going to take you guys back out on deck here. Meet everyone, meet the team. There's the vehicles. Let's take you on a little tour and we can learn. Exploration is like. You get to think on your feet a lot and be adaptable for changing situations. So, let's come on out here to the vehicle. Erik, do you want to talk about what we see here, how we use it for science?
This is the big imaging tool that Herc uses to put out the video to the whole world, if you guys have been watching with us in the last couple of weeks. This is it. This is the eye that you're looking through the entire time. And then over here we have one of the manipulators. This is a really dexterous hand on here. And we've actually got a cutting tool that's built onto here where you may have seen us taking some coral samples. It'll actually snip it there and then hold onto it in between here. And then we can drop it in here. This is called the bio box. It's a temperature insulated box. It'll keep the samples cold until we get up to the surface and we can bring them in the lab, preserve them usually in alcohol or frozen, and bring them home so we can really identify them. We're pretty good about knowing what we're looking at, but when you're working in the deep sea, you usually come across some new species. I think we probably did that on this cruise. We had a couple people asking about that. There are a few things that we didn't know what we were looking at, and the really cool thing about the Nautilus program is that we have a lot of scientists on shore as well that are writing in the whole time, talking to us about what they think the species are, so we can have these constant discussions. And there were a few times when we stumped all of the world's experts on the corals that we were looking at, and that's when it gets really exciting. That's when you know you found something really cool, when nobody knows what they're looking at. So,
how do you get to name a new species, eh?
I know, I promised one to get named after you, didn't I?
You did promise, but...
I'm not, I usually don't name the species myself. The species get named by taxonomic experts in the field. They specialize in a few very specific groups, and so they'll go through, they'll make sure they, count the numbers of little sclerites inside the polyp, the numbers of polyps in a whorl, and the whorls per branch, and all this very elaborate, time-consuming work, but it's really interesting too, and then you get to name it whatever you want. So they're usually different. For any specific group, there might be like a sort of a custom that's followed where one was named after a scientist, and so the rest of the species will all be named after other famous old scientists. Or there'll be, a description of one part of the anatomy, one of the arms, or the shape of that they'll name it after. So one day we'll get Megan Cook-Eye out there, and we'll get you a species one of these days. Don't worry.
Thanks.
Famed explorer Megan Cook.
I think I want a sea star. Okay. That was one of my favorite sea creatures from this exploration. We got to see a bunch of sea stars, which I want to call firework stars. They're bright red with all their arms sticking up, and they're filter feeding. So you can imagine if someone was just standing in the kitchen throwing food past you, and you had to catch it as you went by, but you didn't get to move your feet. That's a fun game for everyone at home. Do that at the dinner table. Impress your family and your friends with your deep sea knowledge. Those are called Brisingid sea stars, and they were one of my favorites from this leg that we got to see. Did you have a favorite, or do you have a favorite sea creature?
So tough. There's so many. I really love the swimming sea cucumbers. We saw quite a few of those. But there's this coral called Erik Cordes. It's this gigantic spiral that goes all around. There are definitely some highlights online that you can check out on Nautilus Live. And it has these little shrimp that live inside of it that are very specific. You only find the shrimp on this one species of coral, and you only find one species of coral on that specific, or one species of shrimp on that specific coral. So they have this very intricate relationship, symbiosis, and it's really the most beautiful thing that I've seen there.
Do the shrimp spend their entire life just clinging onto that one coral?
We think so, yeah. The shrimp and also some of the other brittle stars, the ophiuroids, they look like snakes sometimes, and they wrap their arms around the corals. A lot of those, they'll spend their entire lives there, just hanging out on that one coral.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we're so
sorry we couldn't get the questions loaded with you guys and the little overheating issues, but thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
From Hercules and the exploration vessel Nautilus, we want to encourage you guys to tune in for the rest of the season. I won't be on the ship, but a whole bunch of more explorers will be joining the ship. Our whole Corps of Exploration has over 100 scientists, engineers, educators, and just general people who are passionate about the ocean. So if you love the ocean, if you want to understand what we have left to discover, because I think we really spend more time creating more questions than we do creating answers with deep sea exploration. But tune in to nautiluslive.org. Thank you to everybody on Mission Blue. Check out the movie on Netflix. No healthy oceans, no healthy humans on the planet. So it's all about understanding what's happening on most of our planet, which happens to be salty and blue.
And deep.
And deep. And very, very deep. Thanks, Erik, for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thanks, Erik. Bye-bye.